Welcome in to this episode of Beyond the Game with Hal. Today, I've college football expert and analyst Richard Johnson. Richard brings insightful insight to the college football world from the play on the field, the behind the scenes, and the all exciting NIL. Richard is one of a kind doing work for CBS, but he's also had experience with stuff for ESPN and even has his own podcast that he runs. So I'm excited to have Richard on and welcome in, Richard.
Hal, it's good to be with you, man.
Excited we were able to sit down, and very common question that I ask for you is what really motivates people to get into writing? Obviously, sports is something that so many people around the country love, but what was it for you that got you into wanting to be a writer and reporter?
Yeah, this is pretty much the only thing I've ever wanted to do. I was a very bad high school football player. I knew that if I wanted to stay around the game in some way, shape, or form, it was going to need to be journalism. And, I pursued it from the outset. The only kind of differentiation of my career path was I originally came in to college. I went to the University of Florida. I originally came into school thinking I wanted to do TV. And then I kind of got into some of the television classes at UF, and I was like, this is kind of boring. I don't really like this. I didn't really like the 2-minute stand-up news format. I thought that it kind of lacked nuance, and I didn't really want to be the guy on the 6 o'clock news. So I pivoted to writing, and I loved writing. I liked writing essays in school. I never disliked it. I hated math. God, I hated math. But I did well in my English classes. I did well in my history classes, and I enjoyed that kind of stuff. So I guess I'd always kind of had a kind of proclivity to writing. I remember even when I was younger, weirdly, my dad would make me, if I ever asked what something meant, my dad would make me go look it up in this big red dictionary that we had in our house, giant dictionary. I don't even know if they make hardback dictionaries anymore like that. But now, even when I come across, I remember reading something and I come across a word I don't know in my phone, I will look it up on my phone. I'll Google the word, just because I always have that interest and knowledge of kind of how the English language works. So yeah, I pivoted to writing in school and ended up working for the student newspaper at the University of Florida. Shout out the Independent Florida Alligator. I worked for a couple of recruiting websites and stuff like that to kind of get on my feet in school, and writing was kind of the original path that I went on professionally when I got out of school.
I couldn't agree with you more that math is not the best and English never really gives me a problem. And one thing that I like is you could take so many different approaches when you're writing something. In math or in a lot of stuff, they teach you, hey, you need to do one thing, you need to do it in these steps, and if it's not exact, it's wrong. There's no wrong in writing. It's all different style. You're allowed to be your own self, your own person, and it's just enjoyable. Like the 6 o'clock news, hey, you got to cover the weather and you got to cover what one big event was. And you're going to do that every day for your career. Writing, you never know what's going to pop up. Who would have thought when you were coming out that you were going to be talking about players signing for $1 million in college?
Yeah.
It changes so much, and you never know what you're going to be able to write about and all the cool experiences that you're able to have. And to back off of what you said, writing for Florida, now you do writing and you do the talk shows. What is it like putting stuff on paper and reporting versus giving some analysis on TV?
Yeah, a lot of times they overlap. That's, I think, the fun in it. A lot of times, Indiana national champion, right? Indiana's going to the national championship. So, I'm going to talk about Indiana on camera. I'm going to do a podcast about Indiana. I actually did one earlier today. And I'm going to write something about Indiana a little bit later this week, breaking down the game. So all three of those things will overlap. And that's the fun thing. So you end up telling the same story or a similar fact about a team, and you tell it three different ways. Creatively, that's very stimulating to me. The way you write it is not the way you speak it when you're in casual conversation on a podcast, is not the way you say it when I'm on an analysis segment on CBS Sports HQ or what have you, and I have 90 seconds, for instance, right? I'm time limited. So there are different ways to tell the same sorts of information, for instance. And that's really the fun of it when you work across different creative disciplines, being a sports journalist.
Right. You don't have to just pick into one. I write for my high school paper, and I'm actually doing a preview of the national championship that I was going to go right after this. And I have to pick which way am I going to take it. Obviously, I want Indiana to win, but I can't write from a biased perspective. Which way do I want to take it? Do I want to focus on? Obviously, I'm a little bit more incited on Indiana and what they've been able to do. Which way do I want to take it? Do I want to focus on the Heisman winning quarterback and the 6-year transfer, more experienced quarterback? Or do I want to take it into the trenches or the coach's interesting paths? There's so many different ways that I can talk about these teams, and then none of them are wrong. They're all the right way to do it. And there's so many different articles, and you never know. They're all not going to be written the same way. You're going to read one article on ESPN, one on CBS, and you're going to get two completely different takes and perspectives. And something you were saying, you get to write about the national championship, you get to go to the national championship. What are some of the perks and some of the good experiences? What are some of your favorite experiences you've been able to have in this profession?
Yeah, this year was one of my favorite ones. I actually got to go to the Penn State whiteout game. They played Oregon. That's one of the coolest atmospheres in college football you can possibly have. I've been to Red River, Florida, Georgia. Those two or I went to Florida, Georgia this year. Obviously, I've been multiple times when I was younger, but I went with some friends, my girlfriend and her dad, and got to kind of show them what the atmosphere is like. I got to go to Red River a few years ago and see what Oklahoma, Texas is all about. I've been in a couple field storms, which is pretty cool. There's always, I think that when you're at a championship game, though, championship games are interesting because you feel the energy of this achievement, right? These young men have lived their entire lives to play in this game. It's not just since training camp when they showed up back in Bloomington, for instance, and they showed up day one for training camp and they practiced and to get to this spot. It's more than that. It's you've worked your whole life to get to this spot, and you've got 3.5 hours to put it all out there. And what you do on this field in this game specifically changes the history of the sport. And it's a very, very, it's high pressure, eyes of the world. I mean, there's going to be 25 million people are going to watch this game. And everything. The thing that I love about sports, especially in today's day and age, when there are so many distractions and there are so many things you can do from an entertainment standpoint, when a live sporting event is happening, it's one of the few times when the outside world stops and it doesn't matter. Everybody in the stadium, everybody watching on TV, like everybody's going to be locked in on this game because it's so important. And I think that is such a unique thing. Everybody who plays college football is going to be watching. Everybody who coaches college football is going to be watching. I think the eyes of the sports world are going to be on that stadium Monday night, and at least the American sports world. And it's very interesting when you kind of put it in those kind of terms. So championship games are obviously always special. Really, really unique experiences and unique atmospheres. And so it's always really fun. But getting the breadth of college football that I've been able to get doing this job when I was working for Sports Illustrated and SB Nation, it's really neat to be able to go to different places and experience college football. I've been to an Eastern Kentucky game, for instance, for a story I wrote one time, and I've gone all the way from Eastern Kentucky all the way to a national championship game and everything in between as far as covering it at a bunch of different levels.
Right. Two things about that. One, I've seen people who have gone to Michigan, Ohio State games that has like almost the same atmosphere of people. Most of the rosters grew up in Michigan or Ohio State rooting for that team their whole life, and they just want to beat that other team and then storming the field after, what that's like in the atmosphere. But also all the in-betweens. You said Eastern Kentucky. I watched Jeff Pearlman on TikTok, who I've had on the show, and he brings in the littlest details, and it's always the most interesting thing. Doesn't always need to be the starting quarterback or the starting receiver. It's the third string quarterback or the third string offensive lineman who was a transfer from a D3 program the year before. Really small stuff like that just makes the sport so good. And then for you, when you're hosting podcast or a talk show, you usually have a co-host. And do you come in scripted saying, I want to talk about these facts, I have these opinions? Or do you go off of, hey, if your co-host is saying something and you kind of then like, whoa, that opened a new thing for me that I've never really realized, and kind of go off script as if there's a script, and how do you adjust to the mood of the show?
Yeah, I certainly do come in with a few things that I want to hit. And I think it depends on the guest. Like if I don't know the guest, I'll have things listed out just so I have something, right? I don't know this person. I've never talked to this person. I don't have a rapport with this person. So, if all else fails, I have these whatever things. Or let's say I have certain ground that I definitely want to hit no matter what happens in the interview or in the conversation. So yeah, I definitely bring stuff to the table. But the best podcasts or the best shows, like you're saying, they are the conversations. And so you're jumping off of a point that somebody is saying. It shows to the listener that you, the co-host, is listening. And it's a more fluent, natural conversation. And it's you just never know where things are going to go when you kind of jump off of somebody's point. And a lot of times they sometimes reevaluate something that they've said because you're kind of interrogating it in a different way, or you're making them think in a different way. So I would say it's a mix of both. A lot of like my podcast co-host, Alex, we've done this for so long, both on the podcast and working together, doing stuff with Split Zone Duo, that I know how he's going to react to some things, which is good because I can get it out of him in service of the audience.
You kind of know how to mess with him and like be like, hey, I want to do this. I've been doing this with you for so long. You're probably friends with him. You know what his tendencies are. You can kind of manipulate it.
And you can also
but it's a lot different. It's a lot different when you're having someone on who you don't really know what their tendencies are and how to like manipulate them to kind of go along with the show, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, and you can tee them up and you can platform your co-host or your interview guest to be their best or at least most insightful self, right? Like it's not a competition. You know what I mean? Like in the end of the day, like we're trying to make the best show possible. So if I've got an inkling about how he's going to react to a certain thing and I can tee him up to deliver something that he may not be thinking about, but I know how he thinks about just things in general, and I can kind of make him look good. It's one of the things that I look to do when I'm with somebody who I know and I'm comfortable with.
Right, and it's so different because you never know. I mean, Washington's quarterback, what's happening with him entering the portal, getting back, re-signing in college football, going back, all this tampering. But what is even tampering considered at this point? There's so much stuff that you don't even know. So how do you take that extra step and really, when you're reporting, make sure you're getting the facts, but also getting like the interesting storytelling side of it?
Yeah, you kind of have to. One of the things that I tell people is you report what you know, but you don't have to be as specific as possible, right? And I'd say that it's not lying, it's not telling untruths, but that Jaden Ball thing that I reported as a running back who's making over $1 million, like I've heard a few different numbers about his salary, right? Like and again, I'm going to make these numbers up. But let's say I had heard somebody told me he was making $1.2 million, and then somebody else told me he was making $1.6 million, and then somebody else told me he was making $1.4 million. Those are wildly different numbers.
And really the fact that we're even having this conversation about college football, that's a whole nother conversation.
Right. But a lot of times, especially when you get into dollar amounts and years and contract language and that sort of stuff, you just try to kind of pull it back a little bit and say, all right, like I know for a fact it's over $1 million. Sometimes for time, I don't have the time to run it out, right? I got a deadline here. I got to publish something. So you kind of have to push-pull with that. I think that that happens a lot with like when you get into like specific numbers and all that sort of stuff. You always want to try to have multiple sources, or if you're using one source, it's a primary source for information, especially like, and when I say a primary source, I mean like
the agents,
an agent or a decision maker or an athletic director or whoever, like somebody privy to, let's say, negotiation, somebody privy to a deal. It can be frustrating to cover ongoing negotiations because of how quickly things change, and how much things could change and why things are changed. Like in a negotiation, there are a lot of different factors that go into why a negotiation either succeeds or fails, or how it lands on a certain number or what have you. You just have to be understanding of the fluid dynamics of things, and know that sometimes people have their own agendas with stuff. People have their own reasons for giving you information and not giving you information or full picture, and you kind of have to suss things out with that.
Right, and you just mentioned something, you reporting on the University of Florida's running back and what they're doing with him. And you also mentioned earlier, you were a big Florida fan growing up. You love Florida. How do you keep that bias so your fandom doesn't get in the way of your reporting?
Yeah, I think that you have to be honest, I think, with the audience.
Obviously a Florida grad as well.
Yes, yeah. You have to be honest with the audience. Like I will never shy away from the fact that I graduated from University of Florida. Like I grew up a University of Florida fan. Like it's you are authentic with your audience if you admit to your biases. And you are authentic with the audience if you admit that, like, yeah, I'm not hiding this from you. Like it's my life story. Like it is who I am. Now look, at the end of the day, University of Florida doesn't help me pay the rent. CBS helps me pay the rent. So at the end of the day, like I am owed more to CBS, or I should say, I am more kind of, I'm working for CBS here. Like I'm in a spot right here where CBS and my audience deserve the best information. Now, obviously, I went to the University of Florida, so that's where some of my connections are. Just naturally, it's just kind of the way things go. And so, people have to understand that and all that kind of stuff. But I find it pretty easy for me to put the bias hat aside or the Florida hat aside when I'm working in this, because you're dealing with so many different things within college football. And when I talk to a source at Georgia, I don't not like that source because he went to Georgia. You know what I mean? Like, or because he works at Georgia. Same with Tennessee or Florida State or any of Florida's big rivals, for instance. Like, my job is to cover college football at a national level. My entry point was from a University of Florida centric viewpoint, but that viewpoint expands as you do this job, and you get kind of more 30,000 foot on things, and you go about your business kind of that way. I think the era of the audience demanding that sports journalists like be completely to a fault, like against where they were, you know what I mean? Because there's one way that I could go to the University of Florida, where I could be totally like always criticizing them, like always like I try not to do that either, because people can also see through that. And people can see like, oh, you're kind of being a little phony and you're trying to like be hard on Florida or whatever. So with Florida, as far as a lot of other schools, like I just try to kind of play it down the middle with them and try to be neutral. Like it's not easy, I think, because you're dealing, what makes it difficult is dealing with all the different dynamics. Like it's a lot easier dealing with any other school that I deal with because I don't have all that background and all that history and all that sort of stuff. But with Florida, yeah, there are certainly a lot of dynamics that go into it when I try to cover it, just because of it's my past and it's where I came from.
Right, and that's why it's so hard to tell where these NFL, college football reporters, broadcasters came from. It's because they're just dealing with football. They put their fandom aside because there's so much more than just being a fan. Like if you're a fan, like I am of the Bears, you're gonna focus 95% throughout a whole year, a whole season on the Bears. That's all you're gonna know. If you're just a fair weather fan and you Bears fan, you don't really care what the Chiefs are doing most of the time, or you don't really care what the Jaguars are doing. And so you know a little bit more, but that doesn't take away of what you can't do or what your restrictions are. And going back to college football with your reporting, you report on recruits and commitments, all that stuff. How much of that do you think has changed? And you've done this for so long. How much do you think of that has changed from when I wanted to when it was, I'm going there to make it to the NFL, win national championships, get good coaching, compared to, well, I might not win a national championship there, but I'm going to get paid more money, a significant amount more money going to another school.
Yeah, I mean, it's a changing dynamic. I think that if Look, the NFL has had contract structures and collective bargaining for 50 years, 60 years. College sports hasn't had that. I have always felt that it was literally morally wrong that college athletes were not paid for their services. It's the only thing in the United States of America where we don't exploit, and I use the word exploit, where we don't let you benefit monetarily from your services in a free market. Absolutely insane. We, and by we, I mean the NCAA. The NCAA hid behind this sham of amateurism for over 100 years. And because of their delay, because they're dragging feet in the mud, we are in this spot right now where we have to very rapidly, we college sports, have to very rapidly create a player compensation structure out of thin air with a lot of different influences. You know, if we would have done this 50 years ago, it'd be a little bit of a different deal. So yes, it's rocky. But at the end of the day, all of this is better than what came before because the athletes are being compensated. And that is what is right to me. And so, yes, it is frustrating and it is crazy to deal with. But like my North Star on all this is at the end of the day, the fact that Jaden Ball is making over $1 million is right. Whereas if Jaden Ball
that's his value, he deserves it.
Exactly. That's his value. He deserves it. The previous system that we had, where he was either A, not making money at all, or B, making below his market rate under the table, that's not right. And so what we have now, messy as it may be, is still better than what came before.
Exactly. And I don't think I saw something on social media the other day that was like, if Warren Buffett really wanted to, he could donate $40 million to Nebraska, like pocket change, and they could build the dirtiest college football team of all time with just buying all these players. I don't think that should be acceptable. I think it should be like the NFL. You can't just spend however much money you want without some sort of punishment. I think there's got to be some limitation in place and something that's like, oh, I'll pay you to play college football for my team. There needs to be like a market value of what am I getting paid for to do that?
Yeah,
Yes, I'm getting paid for the college football, but like, am I going to be advertising? What way am I going to be doing here? Some of that nature.
yeah, and we're getting there, I think. Now, there's a push-pull here. Like at the end of the day, if you want them to be employees, which I think is probably a way this can get a level of normalcy to it, you, the schools, are going to have to do things like giving them long-term disability insurance, giving them workers' compensation, like all this type of stuff. Like there are things that the schools are resisting.
The schools are on both sides, and it gets messed up because the schools want them to play for their team, but they don't want to do what is right if you want to be able to pay them to play for you and have your share in the market rise up because of them.
Right. So there's a lot of different things that have to happen in order for us to get to a system like the NFL or the NBA or hockey, for instance, where there's kind of a salary cap and there's a little bit of a parity because of that. So there's work to be done, and they're trying to do it, but it's a messy, thorny thing. And again, it's something where you're watching a market mature in real time, and you're dealing with all the things that come with that.
Right, and it's so much different if this was done, like you said, 50 years ago. There's not social media where anyone out there can voice their opinion, where you can get everything in the snap of a finger. Legit, you search up on X, and there's thousands of things that are right at the edge of your fingertips. This was done however many years ago. There's not that much that fans and reactions can have about that, because I guarantee that people's reactions are altering what the decision makers want to do. Because it's all like, who can get the most views? How can we make the most money? And that comes from the fans.
Yeah, I think that, for instance, the Devon Williams thing. I think a lot of that decision actually ended up, the blowback for that decision actually ended up kind of influencing him kind of pulling back and just saying, all right, like I'm actually going to stick to this, and I'm actually going to go to Washington, for instance.
Right. All right. To conclude here, we have the final 14 questions in a rapid fire pace, no explanation needed. They've been done with every single guest I've had on. So, Richard Johnson's version of the final 14. Let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
Who's your idol?
Idol in the game. I think Bomani Jones is a sports commentator. He's just tremendous in the way that he views the sport and particularly how he views kind of issues of race and class and brings that into what he does.
Favorite fast food?
McDonald's or Chick-fil-A.
Favorite school subject?
American history.
Biggest fear?
Not living up to my potential, I think.
Favorite hobby?
Golf.
Favorite gym workout?
Ooh, I'm gonna go deadlift.
Favorite influencer or social media personality?
Favorite social media personality. Uh, there is favorite social media personality. That's a good one. I'm gonna go with my friend Liz Breed at Shank Haney on Instagram.
Favorite musician?
I'm so bad. I don't really listen to music all that much. It's so funny. Drives my girlfriend absolutely insane. I'm gonna go favorite musician right now, Olivia Dean.
Favorite animal?
Favorite animal. I'm gonna go Jaguars. Go Jags.
Favorite TV show?
Favorite TV show right now. I'm watching Pluribus on Apple TV. So favorite TV show is Pluribus.
Biggest pet peeve?
Biggest pet peeve. Biggest pet peeve is the lack of empathy that we have in society right now for other people.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh, I do not believe a hot dog is a sandwich because I don't believe that a hot dog it's not between two pieces of bread that are two separate pieces of bread. Like the bun, it just kind of curves. So yeah, a hot dog is not a sandwich, and not in my estimation.
Favorite emoji?
Favorite emoji is I like the thinking face emoji. Yeah, yes, that one.
And then last but not least, are you a shower singer?
I'm a shower singer. Yes, I'm a shower singer.